Hi, I'm Kenneth Shell, and I'm excited to talk with you today about my dissertation topic, which is going to look at how Oklahoma City desegregated and the process that it went through. I find Oklahoma's history unique and fascinating, especially when it comes to desegregation, because Oklahoma, like a lot of southern states, are going to have segregation ingrained in its system. In fact, it is encased in law in the state's constitution when it was first passed. Then we'll see Oklahoma also fully segregate its public schools. It's one of 14 schools that would be fully segregated across the board. You're also going to see events and use of violence by whites to keep African Americans marginalized and try to keep that status quo, like events like the Tulsa Race Massacre. But then we start to see Oklahoma take a different trajectory and a different track following the Brown decision. Raymond D. Gary, who was just newly elected governor, he's going to go out on a limb following the Brown decision. He's going to try to streamline that with his Better Schools Amendment. At the same time that is being passed in 55, you're going to see two high school coaches that will be the coaches of the state's powerhouses. All white Capitol Hill is going to take on all black Douglas in the first official football game at Taft Stadium. And 10,000 Oklahomans are going to go and see this event. There's not going to be protests. There's not going to be violence. All cases and purposes, the game goes on without a hitch. In fact, the OSSAA, which is the governing body for high school sports in Oklahoma, is going to pass regulation that's going to allow African American schools to compete against their white counterparts in state contests, and a year later moving on from 56 and continues on. And so what we see is a different trajectory that Oklahoma is going to be on. But you're still going to have pockets of resistance. There's still going to be areas that are going to still be segregated. And so you're going to start to move into Clara Luper's sit-in movements. It's going to take place in 1957. It's one of the earliest sit-in movements of the modern civil rights era. And even those movements, even though she's going to be arrested, even though there's going to be some protests, there's not going to be mass resistance. In fact, you're going to start to see local department stores and leading companies in Oklahoma City go and meet with her and start to work through the desegregation process and open up their doors to African American customers in all places and restaurants and so on. And so why is Oklahoma different? That's really what my dissertation topic is going to look at. And what was the lived experience, especially for those students that are desegregating, because as they're seeing city ordinance starting to be passed, as they see their teams being able to compete, as they see Governor Gary's proclamation amendments that are being out there, you're still going to have de facto segregation. We're also going to see a school board in Oklahoma City that is going to slow down that process. Even though the governor's trying to push ahead, you're going to see Oklahoma City School Board push that back. They're going to use that de facto segregation to minimize the impact on their schools. And even though Capitol Hill made a leap and took on Douglas in an official game, they're going to be the last school to desegregate in 1972. And so I'm curious on what was that experience for those students. As some of those students are able, through neighboring schools, be in there, what role and experience are they going to have, and how did they handle those situations? Because what we see in 1972 is that there is violence, there is accusations of rape, there is a mass arrest of 17 students in that first week of school. But by the end of that semester and going into the spring, you're going to see another sporting event that's going to kind of bring that school together. Capitol Hill is going to go on and win the state championship in basketball, and they're going to be led by Winford Boyes, African-American student that's eventually going to go on to greater and bigger things as he eventually plays in the NBA. And so you have some fascinating tales that need to be woven together that just hasn't been yet in the historiography. The reason for that is early historians on the civil rights, modern civil rights movement, have really concentrated and follow the lead of Garrow, Faircloth, and Branches, who's going to really investigate Martin Luther King. They're going to investigate the SCLC and really looking at what the Deep South has got going on. And of course, subsequent historians will start to branch that out. You're going to have Jonas Gilberts, and who's going to look at the NAACP, and Arsenault, who's going to look at CORE. Claiborne's going to look at the SNCC. And then from there, you're going to start to see some really regional studies. They're going to start looking at St. Louis and Boston and busing and Philadelphia. And one of those studies that hasn't really been done is Oklahoma. There's been some master thesis as well as some dissertations that have kind of looked at some periods before segregation, and then we have a couple master theses which are going to look at from 54 to 64, from Brown's decision through the Civil Rights Act, and then you're going to have another one that's going to look at 58 with Clara Luper's work through 64, where Oklahoma City businesses desegregate. But what we're really missing is from 54 to 72, and Oklahoma City being that last kind of vestige in the city of public schools and their process to desegregate. And so it needs to be a little bit more encompassing. That's going to include a lot more there, and I'm hoping my dissertation is going to be able to do that. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to your feedback.